When I walked into that grand living room, I could almost hear my slippers echo against the marble floor. My hands trembled around the small cloth bag I carried, the one I'd owned for nearly 15 years. Inside were only two things: a jar of homemade pickle and an old photo of my son as a child. Everyone in that room was staring at me. Their eyes said the same thing. She's not one of us. And they were right. I wasn't. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't the one pretending that day. That morning, I had decided to play a role, to act poor, simple, and harmless. Because sometimes the only way to see people's true faces is to hide your own. My name is Rida, and for most of my life I've lived simply, too simply, some might say. After my husband died nearly 10 years ago, I managed our small home alone. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, an old veranda full of flower pots, and a kitchen that smelled of cardamom and dust. But it was mine. My son Adil was my pride. He was the kind of boy who would fix a neighbor's broken fan without being asked. Gentle, quiet, always smiling. He grew up watching me struggle, and maybe that's why he became so ambitious. When he got a scholarship for university, I sold my bangles to buy him a new laptop. "You'll go far, Beta," I told him. And he did. He studied hard, got a good job in Karachi, and started earning more than I ever dreamed of. Every time he came home, he brought me gifts: perfumes, scarves, a new pressure cooker. But what I valued most was the way he still kissed my forehead before leaving. That was my peace. Simple meals, quiet evenings, and the knowledge that my son loved me. Until one evening, about a year ago, when he called with a tone I'd never heard before. "Ami," he said, "I want you to meet someone." His voice was light but nervous. "Her name's Rida. I think she's the one." I still remember how my heart skipped a beat. My Adil is getting married. At first I was happy. I prayed for him, thanked Allah for giving him a partner. But soon small things began to unsettle me. He became distant. Our calls grew shorter. He laughed less. When I asked about the girl, he hesitated. "You'll meet her soon, Ami. Her family's a little different." "A little different how?" I asked. He paused. "They're modern. You'll see." I didn't press further, but something inside me tightened. Modern. That one word carried so much meaning. Wealth, pride, class. I didn't care if they were rich or poor. But I wanted my son to be respected, not pitied. So when Adil finally told me he was bringing them over for tea, I spent 3 days cleaning the house. I polished the old glass cabinet, washed the curtains, and even painted the front gate. But the night before their visit, Adil called again. "Ami, about tomorrow." "We're meeting at their house instead. They've arranged everything." I froze. "Their house?" "Yes, they said it's easier." "Don't worry, I'll come pick you up." Something about his tone made me uneasy. Maybe it was the way he rushed through the words, or how he avoided saying why. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept wondering, why wouldn't they come here? Were they ashamed of my small home? The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror. My old cream-colored shalwar kameez looked dull. I reached for a new one, a silk outfit Adil had bought me last Eid, but then I stopped. A strange thought crossed my mind. If they were truly good people, they'd accept me no matter how I looked. So I made a decision. I tied my hair in a plain bun, wore my old faded dress, and picked up my cloth bag, the same one I used for the market. I looked every bit the poor, simple widow I had been for years. When Adil arrived to pick me up, he looked sharp. Clean white shirt, gold watch. His eyes softened when he saw me. But there was something else there, too, a flicker of worry. "Ami, you didn't wear the new suit I got you?" he asked gently. I smiled. "No need, Beta. This one's fine. We're not meeting the president, are we?" He forced a small laugh, but his silence told me everything. He was nervous about what they'd think of me. Their house stood like a monument. High walls, silver gate, guards outside. As we entered, I noticed the driveway lined with roses, trimmed so perfectly they didn't look real. A woman greeted us at the door, Rida's mother, Mrs. Naeem. Her perfume hit me before her words did. "Oh, you must be Adil's mother." she said, her smile tight and polite. Her eyes scanned me quickly, my simple clothes, the cloth bag, and then flicked back to my son. Come in. Please. The living room was vast, cream sofas, chandeliers, and a glass table that looked like it cost more than my entire kitchen. I sat quietly, hands folded in my lap, while Rida joined us, a beautiful girl, I'll admit. Graceful, educated, confident. She greeted me warmly at first, but then her mother began talking. Too much, too loud. So, Mrs. Farida, what do you do? She asked. I smiled softly. I'm retired, dear. I was a school teacher before. Now I just manage the home. Oh, a teacher, she said, stretching the word as if tasting something bitter. That's nice. The rest of the conversation was filled with small remarks, polite on the surface, but cutting underneath. Like when she said, "We believe in a certain lifestyle, you know? Our daughters used to traveling, dining out, that sort of thing." Or when she laughed, "Adil is such a fine boy. Clearly he didn't get his ambition from our side." Each word landed like a pebble on my heart. But I said nothing. I just nodded, smiled, and poured tea from the set she'd offered, even though she hadn't asked me to. That's when I saw it. The glance between her and Rida. A small, knowing look, and I knew, in that moment, that my role as the poor, naive mother had just begun. Adil tried to include me in the conversation, but I could see he was uncomfortable too. When Rida's father joined, he asked about my late husband, where he had worked, what we owned. The kind of questions that sound casual, but aren't. I answered simply, pretending not to notice. They thought I was harmless, ordinary, even pitiful. And maybe that's what saved me, because while they underestimated me, I was quietly watching them, and what I saw behind their smiles wasn't kindness, it was calculation. That evening, as we left, Adil was quiet in the car. "Ami," he said finally, "please don't mind them. They're just different." I turned to him. "Different isn't the problem, Beta. But tell me something, do you love her?" He looked at the road ahead. "I do. Then make sure she loves you, not the life you can give her." He didn't answer. And right then, I knew this story, our story, was only beginning. A week after that visit, my son came home again, this time alone. He looked tired. His shirt was wrinkled, and his eyes carried that soft shadow people get when they've been overthinking. I served him dinner, chicken curry, his favorite, but he barely touched it. "Beta," I said gently, "you're eating like a man being punished." He gave a half smile. "No, Ami, just work stress." But I knew better. A mother always knows. After a long silence, he finally said it. "Ami, I think I made a mistake introducing you like that." I frowned. "Like what?" he sighed. "I should have told them more about you. That you were a teacher, that you raised me alone." I think they misunderstood. I put my spoon down. "Adil, what people think of me doesn't change who I am. I know, but..." He rubbed his forehead. "Rida's mother keeps bringing it up. She said she didn't expect my family to be so... modest." "Modest," I repeated quietly. "That's her word?" He nodded. "She said she wants to make sure Rida isn't downgrading her lifestyle." Those words sat heavy in the air. I felt something shift inside me. A slow, quiet anger. Not because I cared about their opinions, but because I could see what it was doing to my son. He was torn between love and shame. That night, after he left, I sat on the veranda under the soft hum of the ceiling fan. The jasmine outside had started to bloom. Its scent was sweet, too sweet, and somehow it made my heart ache. I prayed, asking Allah for guidance. And deep inside, I knew this wasn't just about social class. It was about pride. A few weeks later, Adil told me the engagement date was set. He wanted me there, of course. But this time I didn't dress plainly. No, I wore the silk outfit he'd bought me last Eid, the one I'd avoided before. Not because I wanted to impress them, but because I wanted to remind myself who I was. When I arrived, The house was glittering with lights and laughter. People milled about, trays of sweets in hand, and a photographer clicked endlessly. Rida's mother saw me and gave a thin smile. "Ah, Mrs. Farida, you came. I was worried you'd feel out of place." Her words stung, but I smiled back. Why would I? We're all family now, aren't we? She hesitated, just for a second, and I caught it. That flash of discomfort. Then Rida came over and hugged me. "Auntie, you look beautiful," she said. And for a moment, I believed her. Her voice was soft, her eyes kind. Maybe, I thought, this marriage could work. But then, as the evening went on, I noticed something small, something strange. Whenever I tried to talk to Rida's parents, they turned the conversation toward money. How much the wedding planner was charging, how much the decorator wanted, how they'd already booked a luxury hotel for the reception. And each time, their eyes flicked toward me, just for a second, as if checking whether I understood how out of my league it all was. Later that night, as guests began to leave, I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. Mrs. Naeem was speaking to one of her friends near the staircase. "Yes. She's sweet but very basic," she said, laughing softly. "Adil seems like a good boy, but I told my husband we'll have to handle the expenses ourselves. His mother can't contribute much." The friend whispered something, and Mrs. Naeem replied, "Well, I told Rida, love is nice, but money matters." "She'll learn," I froze. Those words felt like knives wrapped in velvet. I quietly stepped away before they saw me, my heart heavy, but my face calm. The next day, I decided not to say anything to Adil. What good would it do? He loved her, and I'd seen the way he looked at Rida, like she was his future. But something inside me whispered, a future built on pride never lasts. Weeks passed, and preparations began. Rida's family handled everything, the venue, the decor, the photographer. They insisted, Adil told me. "Ami, they said it's easier that way." "Easier for whom?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer. I could see he was avoiding conflict, trying to keep peace between two worlds that didn't fit together. So I stayed quiet. But I watched. One afternoon, Rida came to visit me for the first time alone. She brought sweets and a bouquet of lilies. "Assalamu alaikum, auntie," she said, smiling. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all, Beta," I replied. "Come in." I made tea and placed the sweets on a plate. She looked around the small living room, the old sofa, the hand-stitched curtains, the ticking wall clock, and I could see the faint surprise in her eyes. "It's cozy," she said finally. "Thank you," I replied. "Every corner here holds a memory." She smiled politely. "Adil talks about you all the time. He says you're very strong," I laughed softly. "Strength is just another name for survival, dear." We sat for a while, talking about her work, her plans, her dreams. She was smart, sharp even, but every now and then, her words slipped. When I asked about her family's business, she said vaguely, "Oh, my father has many ventures, mostly imports." When I asked where she'd studied, she gave a quick answer and changed the subject. Something didn't add up. I'd seen wealthy families before. Real wealth doesn't need to prove itself. It breathes quietly. But with them, everything felt like a performance. The grand house, the expensive talk, the constant show of class. It was too much. And I began to wonder, what if their pride was hiding something else? A few days later, I got my answer, or at least the first glimpse of it. I was in the market, buying vegetables, when I saw a familiar face, Rida's father. But he wasn't in his usual suit. He was wearing simple clothes, standing near a shop that sold auto parts. At first, I thought maybe I was mistaken, but when he spoke to the shopkeeper, calling him Bhai Rate Kam Karo, I recognized his voice instantly. He wasn't buying anything. He was managing the place. I stood there, hidden behind a stall, watching. He talked to the workers, checked invoices, gave orders. That wasn't the behavior of a casual customer. That was an owner, or maybe a struggling businessman. When he noticed me watching, He looked startled. Then he smiled, forced and quick, and came over. "Oh, Mrs. Farida." "What a surprise," I smiled back politely. "Just buying vegetables." "You work here?" He laughed nervously. "Oh, no, just helping a friend. You know how it is?" But his eyes flickered, the way eyes do when the mouth is lying. I nodded, pretending to believe him. But in my heart, the pieces were falling together. The exaggerated wealth, the constant talk about status, the way they'd avoided visiting my humble home. They weren't rich, not truly. They were pretending. And suddenly, I understood everything. They hadn't judged me because I was poor. They'd judged me because they were terrified I'd see through their mask. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, listening to the crickets, replaying every detail in my mind. My son loved that girl, and her parents were building their entire image on a lie. I realized then that my little act of humility, pretending to be poor, had shown me who they really were. And now, it was time to find out just how deep their deception went. The next morning, I decided not to confront anyone. Not yet. You see, when people are pretending, the worst thing you can do is show them you know. The moment you do, they change their game. So I stayed quiet, watched, and waited. But fate, as always, has a way of speeding things up. It happened one Thursday afternoon. I was making dough for parathas when my phone buzzed. It was Adil. His voice sounded tight. "Ami, can you come to Rida's house? Please, it's urgent." My heart skipped. "Is everything all right?" "Just come. I'll explain later." Within half an hour, I was there. The house that usually shimmered with perfume and laughter now felt tense. The air itself heavy, as if it had overheard an argument. When I entered, I saw Rida sitting on the sofa, her face buried in her hands. Her mother paced the room, whispering furiously to her husband. Adil stood near the window, jaw clenched, eyes dark. "What happened?" I asked softly. No one answered at first. Then Rida lifted her face, streaked with mascara and tears, and said, "Adil found out." I turned to my son. "Found out what?" He took a slow breath. "That her family's business isn't what they said it was." His words dropped like stones in water. He continued, voice trembling between anger and disbelief. "They told everyone they owned an import company, but it's just a small part shop, and even that's in debt. They've been borrowing money from people, pretending to be something they're not." I looked at Rida's parents. Her mother's lips trembled, but her tone stayed sharp. "We were only protecting our daughter's image. What would people say if they knew?" I felt something tighten in my chest, not because of their lie, but because of the arrogance still wrapped around it. I spoke calmly. "So you built your daughter's marriage on deception? On shame?" Mrs. Naeem's eyes flashed. "You wouldn't understand. You've never had to climb the social ladder. Respect doesn't come easy in our circles." I smiled sadly. "Respect earned by lies isn't respect, dear. It's pity in disguise." Adil stepped closer. "You made me believe Rida came from a strong background. You hid everything. Why?" Rida's father finally spoke, his voice low, trembling. "Because we were desperate. Our debts are suffocating us. We thought if Rida married well, it would help." Silence filled the room. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed ashamed. Rida sobbed quietly. "Adil, I didn't know the full truth either. I swear I didn't. They told me everything was fine." Adil looked at her, torn between love and betrayal. I stepped closer to her and gently placed my hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes the truth doesn't destroy people. Hiding it does." Rida's mother turned toward me, eyes cold now. "You talk as if you're some saint, but you lied too, didn't you? You came here pretending to be poor, when you're not as simple as you looked that day." The accusation hung in the air. I smiled, just slightly. "Yes, I acted like a poor, naive mother, because I wanted to see who you truly were when you thought I had nothing." Her face paled. "You see," I continued, "I may live simply, but I'm not poor. My husband left me property, land in Hyderabad, and a house that rents out every month. I chose a modest life because I value peace, not appearance." Rida's father looked stunned. "So, you knew?" "I suspected," I said. I wanted to know whether your pride was real or borrowed. Now I do. Adil sank into the chair, holding his head in his hands. I don't know what to do, Ami. I love her. But everything feels like a lie. I looked at him. My son, the boy who once fixed broken fans for neighbors, and felt my heart ache. Beta, I said gently. Love doesn't disappear because of truth. It disappears when truth no longer matters. Rida reached for his hand. Adil, please. I didn't mean for this to happen. I never asked my parents to lie. He didn't pull away. But he didn't hold her hand either. Her mother, still defensive, muttered, You should be thankful, Mrs. Farida. At least your son is marrying into a decent family. I turned to her, calm but firm. Decent families don't measure dignity by money. And if your daughter is truly decent, she'll prove it herself. Without your lies. The rest of that evening blurred into tension and silence. By the time I left, Adil and Rida were in separate rooms. On the drive home, my son said little. The city lights flashed across his face, sometimes warm, sometimes cold. Finally, he spoke. Ami, I feel like I don't know her anymore. I rested my hand on his arm. You know her heart, Beta. The rest you can learn. He looked at me with weary eyes. You still think I should marry her? I sighed. That's not my decision. But ask yourself, are you marrying her for who she is, or who her parents pretended to be? He didn't answer. For a few days, things were quiet. Rida called me once, crying, asking for advice. Auntie, she said, I don't know how to fix this. My parents are panicking. They think Adil will call off the marriage. Do you love him, Beta? I asked. I do, she said instantly. I just wish my parents had trusted that. They thought wealth would protect me from judgment. I told her. Then prove to him, and to yourself, that you can stand on your own truth. No lies, no pretense, she sniffled. How? Start by being honest and with everyone. 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. Rida's father came to our home, alone. He looked older somehow, the lines around his eyes deeper. Mrs. Farida, he said quietly. I wanted to apologize. He handed me an envelope. Inside were some documents, financial statements, debt records, and a letter. I've decided to sell my house and move to a smaller one, he said. I can't keep pretending. Rida deserves better than this false pride. For the first time, I saw humility in his eyes. Not weakness, but surrender. I nodded. It takes courage to face your truth, Mr. Naeem. Don't lose that courage again. He smiled faintly. You're a remarkable woman, Mrs. Farida. I misjudged you. I said softly, we all misjudge people, sometimes even ourselves. That evening, when Adil came home, I gave him the letter. He read it slowly, then looked at me. Maybe they're not bad people, he said. Just scared ones, I smiled. Scared people make dangerous choices, Beta. But sometimes fear teaches us humility. He nodded quietly, his eyes distant. Then after a long silence, he said, I want to talk to Rida again, without anyone else involved. The next day, he met her at a small cafe. Not the fancy one they used to go to, but a simple roadside place where the fans creaked overhead and the chai came in steel cups. He told me later that they talked for hours. About everything. He told her he didn't care about her family's wealth, or lack of it, but he needed honesty. He said he'd rather live in truth than luxury built on lies. Rida told him she'd already decided to take a job, her first, to support her parents and pay off some of their debts. That surprised him. It surprised me too. Maybe sometimes pain forces people to grow. A week later, Adil came home smiling for the first time in months. Ami, he said, we're going ahead with the marriage. But on our terms. Our terms? I asked. Yes. Simple ceremony, no show, no dowry. Just truth. I felt tears in my eyes, and not of sadness, but of quiet pride. He had learned what I'd hoped he would. That dignity is not in pretending to be rich, but in being rich in heart. The wedding was held in a small hall near our house. No chandeliers, no luxury cars, just close friends, family, and genuine laughter. When Rida entered, She looked radiant, not because of her dress, but because of her peace. Her parents stood in the corner, humbled, but smiling. When it was my turn to bless the couple, I placed my hand on her head and whispered, "May truth be the foundation of your home, Beta. Everything else will follow." She looked up, eyes shining with tears. "Thank you, Auntie, for seeing me even when I couldn't see myself." That night, when everyone left, I sat alone with a cup of tea, watching the lights fade. The world outside was quiet, but inside me, something had changed. I had played the role of a poor, naive mother, and in doing so, uncovered the wealth and poverty that truly matter. Because sometimes, the richest people are the ones pretending to be poor, and the poorest are those pretending to be rich. After the wedding, peace returned to our home like an old friend who had been waiting outside in silence. The noise, the tension, the pretense, all of it had finally quieted. But still, I could feel something beneath the surface. A tremor, small and uncertain. Rida's parents had been humbled by the truth, yes. But humility forced, not chosen, doesn't last long. And I knew pride has a way of creeping back, like dust settling on clean glass. The first few months of marriage were gentle. Adil and Rida lived nearby, in a small apartment he rented himself. It wasn't luxurious, but it was theirs. I visited sometimes, taking lunch or helping her arrange the kitchen. She had changed, her tone softer, her laughter easier. She'd started teaching at a local school to help her family pay debts. "Do you enjoy it?" I asked once, her face lit up. More than I expected. I used to think teaching was boring. But seeing those kids, their curiosity, their innocence, it's like finding parts of myself I'd forgotten. I smiled. "Children have a way of showing us who we truly are," she nodded. "I think I understand you more now, Auntie. The patience, the calm. You make everything look so simple." I laughed softly. "It only looks simple because I've survived what isn't." She reached for my hand. "You remind me of what real class is." Her words touched me deeply, not because they were flattering, but because they were true. But one afternoon, the calm shattered. I was in my veranda, watering the plants, when Rida called, her voice trembling, "Auntie, can you come over, please? It's about my parents." My heart tightened. "What happened, Beta?" "They're in trouble again. Some investors came to their house. They're threatening them about unpaid money. My father's been hiding it." Within an hour, I was there. The same grand house that once shone with fake glory now felt hollow. The furniture was still there. The chandeliers still hung. But the light had gone out of it. Rida's father sat on the sofa, head in his hands. Two men stood near the door, speaking harshly. "You said you'd pay last month," one shouted. "We've been patient long enough." I stepped forward calmly. "Please lower your voices. This isn't the place for shouting." They turned to look at me, an old woman in a plain shawl. But something in my voice made them pause. "Who are you?" one demanded. "I'm a friend," I said. "And if you want your money, shouting won't get it faster." They exchanged glances. "We'll be back in 2 days," one said finally, and left. The moment they were gone, Rida's mother burst into tears. "I told him," she cried. "I told him to stop taking loans, but he wouldn't listen. He kept saying we'd recover, that business would turn around." Her husband didn't look up. "It was supposed to be temporary. I just wanted to keep our name." I stood quietly, letting their words hang in the air. Then I spoke softly. "Your name isn't what you wear, Mr. Naeem. It's what you leave behind." He finally looked at me, eyes full of shame. "What should I do, Mrs. Farida?" "Tell the truth," I said simply. "To everyone you owe. To your daughter. To yourself." He swallowed hard. "It's too late." "It's never too late to stop pretending," I said. "But it's always too early to give up." That night, when Adil came home, I told him everything. He listened in silence, his hands clasped tightly. Then he said, "We'll help them." "But not with money." I looked at him, curious. "Then how?" "With honesty," he replied. "They need to face people, not hide behind us. We'll stand beside them, but we won't fix their lies for them." I smiled faintly. "You're learning quickly." He shrugged. I had a good teacher. The next day, we all gathered at Rida's parents' house. Their family, mine, and a few of the creditors they owed. The air was thick with tension, but Adil stood firm. He began, "We know there have been misunderstandings. My in-laws made mistakes, but they're ready to settle things honestly now." One of the men scoffed. "We've heard that before." Rida's father took a deep breath. "I don't blame you. I lied. I built a life on image instead of integrity, but I'll sell what I must. You'll have your money, not in weeks, but months. I won't run anymore." There was silence. Then, one by one, the men nodded. Not because they trusted him completely, but because they saw something new in him: humility. That day marked the first time I saw Mr. Naeem as a man, not an actor. In the days that followed, things changed slowly. Rida's parents sold their luxury house and moved into a modest apartment. The gossip spread, of course. People whispered at weddings. Neighbors speculated. But something unexpected happened. Instead of shame, their honesty earned them respect. Rida told me one evening, "Auntie, people who once avoided my parents now greet them with warmth. It's strange, isn't it?" I smiled. "Truth always draws light, Beta. Lies only shine for a while, like cheap glass." Yet not everyone was kind. At a cousin's engagement, one woman whispered loud enough for me to hear, "Did you see Rida? Poor thing, she used to be so proud. Now her family's bankrupt." I looked at her calmly and said, "Bankruptcy of money is recoverable, dear. Bankruptcy of character is not." She flushed and turned away. I wasn't angry, just tired of the world's obsession with appearance. Because I'd learned something profound. People spend their lives trying to look rich instead of being whole, and sometimes, being whole costs less but means more. A few months later, Rida called with a trembling voice, but this time it was joy. "Auntie!" My father found a small investor. He's starting a new honest business. No loans, no showing off. I felt tears in my eyes. "See, Beta, when you stop pretending, real doors open," she laughed. "I think you should give lectures. You'd fix half the world," I chuckled. "No, child. The world doesn't need fixing. It needs listening." Then came something I didn't expect. An invitation. Rida's family was hosting a small dinner to thank those who had supported them during their hard time. Just 30 people. No photographers, no chandeliers. When I arrived, the same living room looked completely different. No marble shine, no polished pride, just laughter, simplicity, and a warmth that was missing before. Rida's father stood to give a short speech. "I want to thank you all," he said, "especially Mrs. Farida. She taught us something money never could, that the truth, no matter how heavy, is lighter than a lie." The guests clapped softly. I smiled, feeling a quiet peace settle in my heart. Later, as people mingled, Rida's mother came to me. "I used to think you looked down on us," she said, "but now I realize you were lifting us up." I touched her hand gently. "We all stumble, dear. The only shame is refusing to stand again." She nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. "I wish I had your strength," I smiled. "It's not strength. It's surrender. Once you stop fighting to be more than you are, life becomes kinder." That night, when Adil dropped me home, he said something that stayed with me. "Ami, I used to think you were just being old-fashioned, too humble for your own good. But now I understand. You were seeing what none of us could." I looked out the car window, watching the streetlights blur into gold. "Humility isn't weakness, Beta," I said. "It's quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need applause." He smiled. "Rida and I want to be like you someday." I chuckled softly. "Just be honest. The rest will follow." When I entered my house that night, I lit a small candle in the veranda. The flame flickered gently, dancing with the breeze. I thought about all that had happened. The lies, the pride, the fall, the rebuilding. And I realized something I'd never understood before. Sometimes God lets us meet the wrong kind of people, not to test our patience, but to mirror our own hidden pride, to show us the faces we wear without knowing. I had worn one too, the the mask of simplicity, to expose the mask of arrogance. And in that strange reflection, we all found the truth. Months passed. The seasons changed, and so did our lives. Adil and Rida were doing well. Not rich, not poor, but steady. They'd learned to live in truth, in humility, and in gratitude. Every Friday evening, they'd come over for dinner. Rida would sit with me in the kitchen, helping roll out chapatis, while Adil handled the tea. We talked about everything, her students, her parents, her dreams. There was laughter, and sometimes comfortable silence. It was peace, the kind that doesn't shout or sparkle, but hums quietly in the background of a good life. Then one day, the public consequence came, not as punishment, but as revelation. A well-known community leader had invited me to a charity event. They wanted me to speak briefly about the dignity of humility, a phrase I found both strange and fitting. When I arrived, the hall was filled with familiar faces, women who once whispered behind my back, men who judged me by my plain clothes, and even Rida's parents. The irony wasn't lost on me. I stood at the small podium, hands clasped around my notes, and said softly, "I'm not here to lecture you. I'm here to tell a story." The room quieted. "There was once a woman who pretended to be poor," I began, not because she loved deception, but because she wanted to see the truth of people's hearts. Some mocked her, some pitied her, but one day they realized she was richer than they ever knew. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I didn't name names, but everyone knew. I smiled gently and continued, "You see, wealth is loud, but dignity whispers, and only those who listen with their hearts can hear it." There was silence, a deep, thoughtful one. When I stepped down from the podium, people began to approach me. Not with pride, but with warmth. "Your words moved me," one woman said. "I've been chasing the wrong things," said another. And then, Rida's parents approached, hand in hand. Mr. Naeem said quietly, "You told our story with grace." His wife added, "You could have exposed us." "You didn't," I smiled. "Shame is loud enough on its own. It doesn't need an echo." They both lowered their heads, eyes glistening. That night, something changed. Not just between us, but in the community itself. People began to talk about humility, like it was something precious again. Even the women who once judged Rida now praised her resilience. And slowly, without any grand announcement, the story of our family became a kind of whispered moral, one that traveled from house to house, dinner table to dinner table. Don't underestimate quiet people. Sometimes they're the ones holding the mirror. Life moved forward. Rida and Adil had their first child, a daughter, chubby and bright-eyed. When they brought her to meet me, I couldn't stop smiling. "She looks like you," I said, tickling the baby's chin. Rida laughed. "I hope she grows up with your heart." I looked at her, this once proud girl who had been broken and rebuilt into a woman of grace. And I thought, she already has. One afternoon, while we were all having tea, Rida asked softly, "Auntie, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Beta. When you first met us, when you saw how my family treated you, didn't you hate us?" Her voice trembled slightly. I set my cup down and looked at her carefully. "No, child," I said. "I didn't hate you. I pitied you," she blinked. "Pity?" "Yes," I said. "Because when people are lost in pride, they can't see beauty anymore. You had everything, yet you lived like beggars, always begging for approval, for attention, for validation." Tears filled her eyes. "And you still helped us." I smiled gently. "Helping isn't a favor, Beta. It's a responsibility. When God gives you peace, He expects you to share it." She took my hand and kissed it softly. "I don't deserve you," I chuckled. "None of us deserve what we get, good or bad. We just learn from it." As years went by, my hair grew whiter, my hands slower, but my heart stayed full. Every aid, both families, mine and Rida's, gathered together. Children running, laughter echoing through the house that once held only silence. And sometimes, when I sat in a corner watching them, I'd think back to that first day. When I walked into their mansion wearing a plain shawl and worn sandals, I'd remember Rida's mother's proud smile, her father's dismissive glance, the whispers behind my back, and I'd smile, because that version of me, the poor, naive mother, had taught them all something that no sermon or lecture could. That day, I learned too. Pretending to be small can sometimes show others how big they've made their illusions. One evening, years later, Rida's father came to visit me alone. He looked thinner, older, but his eyes were peaceful. "Mrs. Farida," he said, "I wanted to thank you properly before I leave for Umrah." I smiled. "That's wonderful news," he nodded. "I wouldn't have found my way back to God if you hadn't shown me who I'd become." I looked at him kindly. "You found your own way, Naeem Sahib. I just lit a candle in the dark." He smiled faintly. "You know, I used to think your simplicity was a disguise for weakness. Now I realize it was armor," I laughed softly. "Maybe, or maybe it was faith." Before leaving, he placed an envelope on my table. "Please," he said. "It's not charity. It's gratitude for everything you've done for us." I shook my head. "No, Beta, keep it. Spend it on someone who needs a start. That's how blessings travel." He hesitated, then nodded. When he left, I sat in silence for a long time, not because I was sad, but because life, in its strange and quiet way, had come full circle. A few weeks later, Rida called. "Auntie," she said softly, "Abu passed away last night in Makkah." My heart stilled. "He was in sujood," she added, tears in her voice. "The Imam said he smiled before he breathed his last." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I whispered, "He went home in peace." That night, I prayed for him, not as the man who once insulted me, but as the man who found his way back to truth. And in my prayer, I thanked God for all the pain, the patience, and the purpose behind it. Because sometimes the paths that humiliate us are the same ones that heal us. The years kept turning. Rida's daughter grew older, full of curiosity and innocence. She'd sit on my lap and ask endless questions. "Dadi," she said once, "why do you always wear plain clothes? Don't you like colors?" I smiled. "I like peace more," she giggled. "Peace isn't a color." "Oh, but it is," I said. "It's the color of mornings when you've slept without guilt. The color of evenings when your heart feels light." She looked thoughtful, then nodded. "I want that color too." I kissed her forehead. "Then never lie about who you are." Sometimes, when I'd sit by my window in the quiet of night, I'd reflect on everything that had happened, all the deception, the pride, the masks, and I'd whisper to myself, maybe I didn't act like a poor and naive mother. Maybe I just reminded them what real richness looks like. Because in the end, humility had given me everything pride could not: peace, respect, and love that didn't need proving. Sometimes when I sit alone in the evenings, watching the sky turn gold before dusk, I think about how small we all really are. How quickly life can turn our pride into pain, and our pain into purpose. When I first met my daughter-in-law's family, I acted like a poor and naive woman. People thought I was foolish. Some even laughed, but I wasn't pretending to test anyone. I was pretending to remind them, and maybe myself, that humility is the truest mirror of character, because it's easy to be kind when the world is watching. But how you treat the person you think can't offer you anything that reveals who you truly are. I've learned that dignity doesn't live in big houses or expensive clothes. It lives in quiet gestures, a kind word, a patient silence, a steady heart. I've seen people lose everything but walk with grace. And I've seen others gain the world but remain empty. In the end, truth always finds its way, sometimes softly, sometimes through fire. And when it does, it burns away the masks we hide behind. That's what happened to Rida's family. And in a way, to mine too. I didn't win anything that day. There was no grand victory, no applause, no revenge. Just peace, the kind that sits quietly on your chest when you've done the right thing, even when no one saw you do it. When I look at my granddaughter now, her innocent eyes full of light, I pray she grows up in a world that values goodness over glamour, Humility over show. Because pride may open doors, but it's humility that lets you walk through them with grace. If I've learned anything in this life, it's that love, respect, and truth don't need to shout. They whisper. And if you listen, really listen, they'll tell you everything you need to know. So if you ever find yourself in a room where people judge you for what you wear, where you live, or what you have, smile, because they've just revealed their poverty, not yours. And if you ever feel small, remember, seeds start small too, but they grow deep roots. Maybe that's what I was, a seed planted in the wrong soil, waiting for honesty to reign. And when it did, everything changed. Would you have done what I did? Would you have kept your calm, or shown them who you really were from the start? Tell me in the comments below. And if my story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe. Because sometimes, the quietest stories are the ones that teach us the loudest lessons.